From the 11 Alive studios, this is The Georgia Vote with Faith Jesse and Zach Merchant.
Good Sunday morning. Welcome to The Georgia Vote. Zach is on assignment today. Well, it is the election that will never end, the 2020 presidential vote in Georgia. On Wednesday, the FBI executed search warrants on a Fulton County warehouse that held records from that election more than 5 years ago. Federal agents had a warrant seeking all of the county's physical ballots from that election, plus other records. President Trump maintains he won that vote in Georgia and the entire election, despite no evidence and multiple court rulings against him. Well, reaction was swift from Democrats. On Thursday, U.S. Senator Jon Ossoff was in Washington. He is on the Senate's Select Committee on Intelligence. The committee held a confirmation hearing for a potential National Security Agency director. Here's how the senator from Georgia began his remarks.
My constituents in Georgia, and I think much of the American public, are quite reasonably alarmed and asking questions after the director of national intelligence was spotted bizarrely and personally lurking in an FBI evidence truck in Fulton County, Georgia yesterday. So I encourage all of us on a bipartisan basis to pursue the facts as swiftly as possible to understand whether the Office of the Director of National Intelligence is straying far outside of its lane.
This week, we also spoke with two Republican congressmen from Georgia. Both are running to defeat Jon Ossoff for that Senate seat in November. In about 10 minutes, you'll see my conversation with 10th District Representative Mike Collins. But first, Zach Merchant goes one-on-one with 1st District Congressman Buddy Carter. He's positioned himself as an outspoken supporter of President Trump. They start with the FBI raid on the Fulton County Election Center.
When you saw that raid happen, what was your first reaction?
Well, I was thankful finally that the DOJ is going to get to the bottom of this and prove what we've known all along, and that is that Donald Trump won the election in Georgia in 2020. So it's about time that it happened, and I'm glad that it's happening now, and I think they're going to uncover some things that will relieve a lot of the questions and answer a lot of the questions that we've had over the years.
Why do you think the multiple court cases, the recounts, all of the measures that took place in the months after that election didn't uncover evidence of fraud to such a level that it would have overturned that result?
Well, certainly those investigations are important, and so is this one. This one will give us some answers that we've been looking for. And, everyone talks about that being the most secure election that we've ever had in the state of Georgia. I would submit to you, then why did the Georgia State Legislature pass the election integrity law to change our voting rights and to change our voting laws and make it better? And I applaud them for doing that. They did a good job with that, and I'm glad that they did it. But if it was such a secure election, why did they need to do it?
You wrote an op-ed in the AJC last week calling for an increase in federal immigration enforcement efforts in Metro Atlanta. Do you stand by that call?
I do. I support ICE. Look, what happened in Minneapolis is a tragedy. The loss of life, anytime we have that, with Renee Good and Alex Preedy, that was a tragedy, and it's unfortunate, and it's very, very sad that it happened. But we still have to keep focused on what the goal is here, and that is with President Trump and with this administration trying to make sure that illegal criminal immigrants are removed from this country.
When you look at the way that the federal enforcement efforts have played out in Minneapolis since this operation, I believe it's called Metro Surge, began in Minneapolis a couple months ago, are you satisfied with the way that operation has been conducted up to this point?
Well, certainly, let's make sure we understand how all this evolved. If it had not been for Tim Walz and for the mayor of Minneapolis, who were inciting violence by encouraging people not to cooperate and encouraging their law enforcement officers, state and local officers, not to cooperate with ICE, this would not have happened. Now, Tim Walz has called the president. They've had a good discussion. He's agreed to cooperate with the president and with federal officials. I applaud them for that. I served with Tim Walz in the House, and I'm glad that he's doing that. This will lead to a de-escalation of what's going on in Minnesota.
Do you think that there are among federal immigration agents some who have exercised more force than was justified?
The president has promised us that we would have a full investigation into what happened with Renee Good and with Alex Preety. And I applaud him for that. We should be doing that. And yes, I'm sure there's room for improvement here. And in fact, in the budget that we've just submitted that the House passed and that the Senate is considering now for DHS, we've made some changes. We've said we want them to have body cams. They should have body cams. That will help them and assist them.
A reminder, my conversation with Congressman Mike Collins is coming up here in just about 10 minutes. We touch on the FBI raid in Fulton County and the one-year anniversary of President Trump signing the Laken-Riley Act. Well, it's been more than a week since federal immigration agents shot and killed an ICU nurse, Alex Preety, in Minneapolis. On Tuesday, Senator Raphael Warnock visited a memorial for Preety. Warnock said he came not just as a senator from Georgia, but also as a pastor.
I just wanted to be present with the people of Minneapolis. We're standing up in such a courageous way. They're standing with their neighbors. I think of Renee Good, who literally put her body on the line and paid the ultimate price. Alex Preety the same. And all of us in their memory are called to stand up in this moment.
Well, there is a lot to talk about from Minneapolis to Washington to right here in Atlanta, so it is time for our Politics Roundtable. Today we have Devin Barrington-Ward, a progressive community organizer, political activist, and managing director of the Black Futurist Group. Alan English, he's the president of the Atlanta Young Republicans. And Rahul Bali, politics reporter at WABE 90.1 FM on your radio, also the co-chair of the Atlanta Press Club Debate Committee. Kind of a slow news week, huh? Just a little bit.
We had Monday off.
We had.
I mean, but then like midday Tuesday till now, it's been nonstop.
Rahul, let me start with you. In your reporting this week, the biggest thing that stood out.
On the Fulton County raid, I think the two key things I heard at the state capitol, first from Democrats, with whatever is found in this investigation, will it lead to the state election board taking over Fulton County elections? That was one of the key things that Democrats talked about on the floor, talked about in front of the mics, looking ahead. The other thing that I heard from both sides is with whatever is found, will it rise to the level of criminality? Was there a criminal act that occurred with whatever is found?
And you know what, Alan, I want to ask you this too, because speaking with Republicans, I hear the answer, or when I ask them, what do you want to get out of this? Specifically, we're going to hear from Congressman Mike Collins coming up, but he says the truth. And a lot of people say, well, what is the truth? Was the truth not revealed in 2020?
Well, I think we saw that President Biden won the election. I mean, I can say as a Republican that 2020 was 6 years ago. I'm sick of talking about the 2020 election. I want to talk about the midterms in 2026. I want to talk about the presidential election in 2028. And look, I think transparency is a good thing. And if there's something to be found, there's something to be uncovered, I would like to hear what the FBI is looking for so that we can have a conversation about it.
Devin, is it fair? I mean, if there's something hiding in there, shouldn't it be uncovered?
I mean, but it would have been uncovered already. And I commend, Republicans who are willing to say that the 2020 election is not something that we need to relitigate over and over and over again. And it's actually kind of weird behavior for a president who's currently in elected office right now to be obsessing over an election that was nearly 6 years ago. I also wonder how this will impact Brad Raffensperger and his political future, because he is the chief of elections in the state of Georgia. And so to say that something criminal happened on his watch is to undermine the leadership of state Republicans who, by and large, for the most part, are the ones who oversee our elections here in the state.
Raffensperger and Governor Kemp, go ahead.
And to add to Alan's point, there was a frustration because remember earlier on that day, House Republicans rolled out their big property tax package, and you heard from a few strategists that this completely took over that news cycle, and that story pretty much got wiped away.
We're going to talk about that on the other end of the panel, so we'll get back to that. But another big story that we saw this week, of course, was coming out of Minneapolis, the issue with ICE. We've seen students, high school students, walking out of class. We've seen people protesting. But then on the other side, a lot of people are saying this is what needs to be done. President Trump is honoring a campaign promise. Devin.
Well, I think that's mostly Republicans. And even if you look at some of the polling, some Republicans are starting to drift away from the fact that this is not what they signed up for. And so I think that this is an indication of the weaponization of law enforcement by this administration. We see this with the FBI raid on elections. Now we're seeing this ICE being used against people peacefully protesting and just trying to protect and inform their neighbors of their presence in the city, which is not inherently illegal, which is protected speech. And so the fact of the matter is that we are seeing people who are more concerned about ICE raids than what's happening at people's in their pocketbooks at the grocery store. And you see that this is very unpopular president right now. And a lot of this has to do with the way that these ICE and immigration raids have been conducted. The majority of whom of these folks who are being swept up in these raids are not these dangerous criminals that he's continued to profess over and over again. The data just doesn't shake that out.
I want to bring Alan in on this. Alan, do you agree with what Devin's saying?
Well, first, I just want to say it is a tragedy what has happened in Minnesota in the past week and been going on for the last few weeks, and I think we can all agree that it's a sad thing to watch. What's interesting to me is that deportations in this country are not new. We've been deporting people in this country forever. President Clinton, President Obama supported them, deported millions of people, many more than President Trump has done. But now all of a sudden deportations are an evil or bad thing. And I think there's a little bit of a double standard there, but I will say the perception is the reality. And what people are witnessing on the ground, what people are seeing on TV and on social media, they're not liking. And there are some people on both sides of the aisle who are like, look, this is not what I voted for. And so you see Tom Homan comes to Minneapolis this week and he says, we're gonna revert back to what the goal was originally. We're going to be focusing on career criminals. We're going to be focused on gang members, and we're going to deport people like that. And I think that's the strategy that needs to be taken moving forward.
Thank you so much for that. We're going to pause right here. We'll see you all on the other side of the break. Welcome back. 1 year ago, President Trump signed the Laken-Riley Act. Drafted by Congressman Mike Collins of Georgia, the law expands the arrest of undocumented immigrants with criminal records. It's named for nursing student Laken Riley, who was killed on the University of Georgia campus by a Venezuelan man living in the U.S. illegally. Well, this week, I spoke with the congressman about the increased ICE enforcement nationwide and whether Congressman Collins believes Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem should remain in office amid growing calls for her removal.
Well, I have full confidence in what she's doing. It's been a remarkable job. And as a matter of fact, when you think about, look at our ICE agents out there, they've had over an 8,000% increase in death threats on them. You know, and these are just men and women. They want to, at the end of the day, they want to go home to their families. But she is doing a great job making sure that we clean up this country from these illegals that are crossing in this border illegally due to the Biden and Ossoff policies that allowed them to do that.
And just to clarify, so what we're seeing at Minnesota, you're saying, hey, you would welcome more immigration enforcement in Georgia right now.
Yeah, you're already seeing it. It's all across the nation. ICE is not in just one location in Minnesota. They are working all across this country right now. And Georgia is in the top 5 of states that has deportations due to ICE picking up these illegal criminals. And you do not have the same problem that you're having in Minnesota.
What do you say to Americans who see what's happening with ICE enforcement and they agree, because you even have some Republicans who say we need to make sure that people are here in the country came in the right way, but some do not agree with the way it is being done. What do you have to say to them?
I would say look to your local leaders. What is your mayor saying? I mean, if you look at what that mayor said the very first day that he got on TV, the first 4 words out of his mouth, and the 4th one was a cuss word, to get out of their city. You know, that's inciting violence. That's inciting people to riot. When instead, what ICE and what Kristi Noem and what this administration is trying to do is protect American people so that more Georgians don't lose sons and daughters to criminal, illegal people, murderers out there, and get them off the street. They shouldn't have been here in the first place. We need to support our law enforcement. We need to back them up, not stand out there and try to oppose them.
You sent out a tweet saying, go get him cash in regards to the FBI search warrants that happened in Union City. Can you just expand on that?
Well, first of all, I think Cash is doing a phenomenal job. He's a good man. I know him personally. And I think he's got great intentions and he knows what he's looking for. There's an ongoing investigation. The thing is, in Georgia, and I hear it all the time, people don't have confidence in our elections. We've done a lot to clean up the voter rolls here. Clean up the voter rolls. We've done away with a lot of the drop boxes. You know, we're not mailing absentee ballots out to everybody and their pets. So we've done a lot to clean it up. But in order to finish the job, you need to look back and see if there was anything that did happen. There's nothing wrong with looking at it and investigating. And they're doing a good job so far coming in and taking a look at what was going on in Fulton County.
And what are you hoping comes out of that investigation?
The truth, whatever the truth is and wherever it leads.
Do you not believe that the truth was already revealed after the recount?
You know, it doesn't matter what I do or don't believe. The fact is that there's an investigation going on, and you just need to see where that goes.
Well, State House Republican lawmakers introduced the Georgia Home Act this week. The plan would eventually eliminate homestead property taxes by 2032. Now, if it passes, local cities, counties, and school districts would have to make up billions in revenue. House Speaker John Burns is leading the way on this legislation.
Protecting your home place, your homestead, is not partisan. That resonates with both Democrats and Republicans.
Back with our panel, I want to get into what we are seeing under the Gold Dome. Affordability, affordability, affordability. That is what we heard from lawmakers on both sides of the aisle as we were heading in. Now, how do we get there? Different. Republicans really big on taxes. Raul, I want to start with you. This property tax reform, lowering the people's taxes. What are you hearing?
So there's a lot to that. So you mentioned billions. Right now we're hearing the numbers somewhere between $5 to $6 billion that school systems, city and county governments would have to make up. Some of the options that are being put on the table in this legislation would include repurposing current sales taxes, adding new sales taxes, assessments, similar to what you have in HOAs, or another thing that's brought up, you need to cut your local budgets. One of the things we're going to watch for is, local governments are just now getting a hold of this bill. They're going to run the numbers, and local governments and local school systems are going to have to figure out how they're going to have to fill that. And I want to remind people one other thing politically. This is going to have to be a constitutional amendment, which means it's got to be a 2/3 majority in the House and Senate. They need Democratic votes. Then it still has to be approved by voters.
Is that likely?
It's a lot of work, and it's a lot of work, and we're already 20% into the session. This is a really big lift, and there's going to be so many questions, so many changes to get this through.
Alan, I wonder your thoughts on this push to eliminate. Of course, we have this push to eliminate the state income tax. They want to eliminate property taxes, but that money's going to have to be made up somewhere.
Yeah, it is. But I think you're right. Affordability is the key, and looking at property taxes. We've had people's home values go up 40, 50, some 60% over the past 5 or 6 years, and thus so have their taxes. And so people are having a hard time budgeting and figuring out, well, what is my house payment going to be next year? And for renters, how much is my rent going to go up? And so this eliminates that. This is my house payment. This is what I'm going to be paying. And for renters, there's a cap on 3% revenue growth each year, so they're able to budget better. And so if it's passed into a sales tax, that's at least a steady tax that is not going to vary year by year depending upon the value of your home.
Devin, do Democrats get behind this? Do you see any type of bipartisan agreement here?
No, the math is just way too fuzzy. It doesn't make sense. Local governments are not going to be able to make up this massive budget shortfall that's going to happen without having property tax collection in the state. I know it sounds great in theory. I'm someone who has seen my property taxes go up in Fulton County, but I also know that while I've seen my property taxes go up in Fulton County, I've seen large commercial real estate not being taxed at the same level that they should be being taxed at, leaving hundreds of millions of dollars on the table in just Fulton County alone.
So you say they should be going after the developers?
Absolutely. There is a different way of getting to this affordability issue, but trying to shift it to a sales tax when we know that groceries are already more expensive, well, you're just shifting it more to another area that people are already struggling with, and there are real tools and mechanisms that can bring down prices and increase affordability in this state.
Yeah.
But the way that they're doing property taxes, the math just ain't mathing, as the kids would say.
We would definitely see what the kids say, what the legislators say at the end of session and crossover day that's coming up. We will be right back on the other side of this break. More now on the FBI's search of the Fulton County Elections Hub in Union City. A handful of Democratic candidates for Georgia governor weighed in during the hours following the agency's visit.
We know that there are corporations that are sometimes criminal defendants. Sometimes there are individuals who are criminal defendants. But to go after a government in this way really is an abuse of power and creating a level of anxiousness with elected officials and with people like me who worked very hard to turn out the vote in 2020.
This has never been about facts. Donald Trump has never cared about facts in the 2020 election. He's never cared about due process or democracy. He's just cared about his own vanity of losing an election in 2020, acting like it was rigged, and it wasn't.
Another Democratic candidate for governor, Jason Estevez, said in part, "Enough is enough. If Trump tries any of his authoritarian attacks on Georgia when I'm governor, he'll have to go through me." For Michael Thurman, Donald Trump is weaponizing the FBI to raid Georgia election offices in a desperate attempt to rewrite history. The 2020 election has been examined over and over with audits and recounts, and the results have never changed. Donald Trump lost the state of Georgia to Joe Biden. And from Derek Jackson, when the preeminent law enforcement agency in the world is deployed to chase debunked narratives in a warehouse in South Fulton, it undermines the very fabric of our democracy. We must return to a state where the rule of law is respected, not weaponized for political theater. Stay with us. We take a trip to Dahlonega for our Voice of the Voter. That's next. Well, this week, our Voice of the Voter is a lawyer by trade who squeezed his way into the wine business. We head north of Atlanta and hear from Zach Tumlin.
Hello and greetings from downtown Dahlonega, Georgia. Zach Tumlin reporting in from the Tumlin House and Vineyard, 1 block off of the square. I am a lawyer by trade and own a hospice company, but have this little city block to accent and show off the gateway to Georgia's wine country. As you might imagine, I'm an entrepreneur and I do pay attention to politics. The number one thing that affects my daily life that I'm paying attention to is my personal safety and my family's personal safety, and feeling safe in our communities. That's important to me. Second, and a short second behind that, is taxes. I feel like I am taxed through the nose on property taxes and personal property taxes and taxes on furniture at my short-term rental properties and taxes on my boats and taxes on seemingly everything I do. And so I'm concerned about that, and I'm hoping the legislature can get it gear and provide some big tax relief. That is what I'm optimistic about. Hopefully Senator Tillery and his crowd can get that going. Thank you guys, and have a great day.
And our thanks to Mr. Tumlin for submitting that video. Thank you all so much for watching us today. The Georgia Vote will return after the Olympics here on 11 Alive. In the meantime, our politics coverage continues daily on all 11 Alive newscasts. Have a great Sunday.